Hey, it's Venom Cannon 13. We're going to film our next video today on the reassembly of the Ruger Mark III from a detailed strip. So in the previous video we covered how to take it apart, and like I showed in the previous video, I like to have pieces of paper with the name of the piece and the number out of the manual, so that when you're doing your reassembly you don't have to flip back and forth between the list of the pieces and the picture, and that will kind of help you see how they go back together. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to do a trigger group reassembly. So these pieces here are for the trigger group, so we're going to do that first. The first piece we're going to put back together is the trigger pivot retainer, which is this spring here. It's a wire spring, and that's going to go back into the frame. And if you look into the frame, you can see on this right hand side over here there's a little notch that the spring is going to catch into, and so basically this little curved end there is going to slip into that notch. So you just put that in to the notch, and then once that's in, if you press down on it, it will slide into place here. And what that piece is going to do is it's going to engage the notch that is in this trigger pivot pin. It's going to hold the pin in place. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is put that pin in. So this is your trigger pivot pin. We're going to put it in place, press down lightly on the spring, and you want to put the pin in just far enough that it just barely goes over the spring. It's just going to hold that spring down. That'll give us room to put in our next piece, which is actually going to be two pieces. We have our trigger and our disconnect assembly, and this is going to approach from the right side of the trigger. It's going to go into this hole at the top, and then this hole is going to eventually hold your trigger spring and your trigger spring plunger, but we're not going to put those in yet. So when that actuates, it will actuate like this, pressing down on that spring, which will give you tension on the trigger, but we're not going to put that in yet. So we want to put this into place, and then we want to press the pin through the hole just enough to go through the trigger. We don't want it to go all the way because we still have a couple more pieces to put in. So there we can see the trigger is in, but the pin is only flush to the trigger. It's not all the way through. And that will leave us room to put in our next pieces. First, we're going to take the bolt stop plunger and the bolt stop spring, and that's going to go back in this hole on the left hand side there. So the spring goes in first, and then you want to orientate this half cut out piece so that the round part is facing in towards the trigger and the cut out part is facing towards the frame. And the reason for that is because the next piece that goes in is the bolt stop assembly, and that needs to fit in that space. So we're going to slide that into place. Okay, so the knob is going to face through here, and then this will push up against that spring. And if we push it up against the spring with our finger, we can line it up. And now we are going to go ahead and push this pin all the way through. If you push down a little bit, it'll help it line up. And there we go. Okay, so except for our trigger spring and trigger spring plunger, which are going to go in this top hole here, and that will actuate there, that's the trigger group. But we're not going to put this part in yet. We're going to hold that off on that. until we get to the next part. And the next part will be here, will be the hammer group, which will include the sear, the bolt stop, the safety, and the magazine disconnect. These will all go on 2 pins here and here. So that's the trigger group reassembly. For the next video, we'll be doing the hammer group and the sear. Until then, we've got our first part done, the trigger group is in, and we'll see you in the next video.